From the east, house of light, may wisdom dawn in us, so we may see all things in clarity. From the north, house of night, may wisdom ripen in us, so we may know all from within. From the west, house of transformation, may wisdom be transformed into right action, so we may do what must be done. From the south, house of the eternal sun, may right action reap the harvest, so we may enjoy the fruits of planetary being. From above, house of heaven, where star people and ancestors gather, may their blessings come to us now. From below, house of earth, may the heartbeat of her crystal core bless us with harmonies to end all war. From the center, galactic source, which is everywhere at once, may everything be known as the light of mutual love. Ayum hunabku, eva maya, emaho. Ayum hunabku, eva maya, emaho. Ayum hunabku, eva maya, emaho. Good morning. Welcome, planetary kin, Earth wizards. This is the 4th day of our 7-day intensive. The word intensive means that we are applying our discipline to really move into the new knowledge. And this is a special day, so I have to say, Happy Magic Turtle Day. Some of you may know, if the moon is 10 and the tone for today is 10, then it's a Magic Turtle Day. So we have this wonderful moment. We are here, the 25th day of the planetary dog moon, and it happens to be kin 10, which is planetary dog, white planetary dog. So as we do every day, we begin with our daily readout. First we read the kin for today. Kin 10, white planetary dog. I perfect in order to love. Producing loyalty, I seal the process of heart with the planetary tone of manifestation. I am guided by the power of endlessness. I am a polar kin. I extend the white galactic spectrum. So this is the second 20-day sequence of the dog cycle. In the Mayan factor, these are called the burner days. We started with the electric dog. And now we have moved to the planetary dog. So we are in the second set of 20 days for the white galactic spectrum, which is led by the white dog. That's a 65-day cycle. And the dog cycle is what takes us across from one galactic spin to the next galactic spin. Remember, we started by saying that we had entered the 19th spin since harmonic convergence. And now we have entered the second sequence of the white galactic spectrum of 65 days. And then the next part in our daily readout is on the Telektonon board. So we would have our destiny kin, our green pyramid on the dog. On the analog partner of the moon, we'd have our red pyramid. On the antipode, we have the yellow sun. And then the guide for today is the mirror. So we have the white pyramid on the mirror. And then for the occult, where am I? We have the monkey. He's sitting next to me. Okay. So that's our, and in the continuation on the board there that you would have laid out for the Telektonon, we call that your synchronometry, because that's how you read where the turtles are, and then you would look at all of the lines of force, and then you would study the crystal, of course. The recharge crystal would be on the white dog position. Okay? And then the chronometry is where your black and white stones are. And if you remember, you have the one set of stones are for the fourth dimensional circuit, which would show you both the 10s, the tone 10 and the code number 10. And then on the upper turtle, wait a minute, the bottom turtle, you have the 28-day cycle on the outside. So you have the bottom turtle has the black on the 28 and the tone 10 for the moon. It's on each turtle, you know that it's a magic turtle day because both are on the tone 10 and the moon 10. The black's on the 25 and the white is on the moon 10. Okay, so that would be how you would do your synchronometry for the day and then your chronometry, which is, it means that you're keeping track of more than one cycle. And in this way, you're expanding your knowledge of the synchronic order according to the law of time. And then we look to the dynamics of time, which we read every day, again according to the code number 10 and the tone 10. So in the dynamics of time, you would read 10.10. The activity of PAN, Planet Art Network, is an evolutionary probability that increases with the application of the law of time. Galactic culture is the sum of the probabilities of increased or novel aesthetic norms induced by the harmonic rearrangement of the synchronic order. So when we practice each day the levels of the synchronic order, we are establishing ourselves in the harmony of the law of time. And this is what is said when we say the return to natural time is to return us to harmony, to live in harmony with the earth as an earth wizard. And then we continue the readout for the day. So we would go to the Telektonon prophecy book, and then we turn to the section that's guided by the kin for today, 10. And this section is very appropriate for what we've been speaking of. It's called the Book of Dark Prophecies. One special voice did this Jesus have, a man named St. John of Patmos, in whom the gift of prophecy was fulfilled. From my ark of universal time, earth's special lodestone of truth, rock of heaven, attained by 13 tones, I guided St. John's hand by the mystic power of 7, and so was sent to the world the book of dark prophecies, Revelations, the Apocalypse, 22 mystic chapters. The first 13 mirroring my 13 great Baktuns, 9 more for the Lords of Time, 7 of these for each of the 7 years of prophecy, and the last 2 to complete the visionary power of the righteous of the cube, 144,000 times 13. To those who can read, they will find Iblis's numbers 1260 and 666 well known on the day of truth. For 1260 is the ratio of the false time, which makes martyrs of the righteous, and 666 the number of the beast, who captures my 13th Baktun. Children of the day of truth, children of the dawn, people of the book, all this you can hear in the stones of Palenque, where in the 10th Baktun I took pure human form. Of the 27 books of the New Testament, the 27th is Revelations. 27 steps ascend to the palace of Bolon-Ik. This palace, New Jerusalem, is the mystic power of Telektanon. The 28th step, the power of 7 sanctified foursquare. 22 chapters of Revelations are the 22 kin complete in Bolon-Ik. 13 for the power of time, 9 for the 9 lords of time, whose forms still guard my ark of stone, deep within the ninefold temple of the cube of the law. Perfect was the time of my coming, kin 1,366,560. Perfect was the time of my going, kin 1,385,540. Installed in the house of the serpent, my coming was commemorated by the departure of the third messenger, the special messenger of the day of truth, the apostle Muhammad, who left for the righteous of the earth the book of the righteous, the Holy Quran, clear signs to understand. As Buddha taught, so pure one mind, so Muhammad taught, so pure one God. Submission to the will of God is at the center of the law of the cube. Truly for the righteous, there is only the straight way, the path of basic goodness laid out in the heart as obedience to God's will, the divine plan, unfathomable to those who cry, reason alone can save us. I never tire of reading the prophecy Telektanon, because always there is more meaning. Meaning comes in levels and levels and levels. So the more you study and learn, the more you understand. And also in the cyclic order, as humans, we like to feel the cycles returning. We like to feel that everything is a harmony and in order. And this is how the synchronic order informs us and brings us into a self-harmony, where we can actually begin to fulfill God's plan for each and every one of us, that we are meant to live in harmony and to use our intelligence, to wake up, to be conscious every moment. Finally, for today, as we turn to today's topic, as you know in the morning, we always begin with the context. Today's subject is time and morality, the test. And this morning we will cover time and the biosphere, the Judgment Day trial. And I'm going to read from the first section of the booklet on the First Planetary Congress of Biospheric Rights. And I'm reading this section that begins it because it's the mandate of the biosphere. And this is how, as Earth Wizards, we begin to become planetary servers for the Earth. Mandate of the biosphere. The biosphere is the life support system of our planet. The mandate of the biosphere is supreme in governing the life of all the species which constitute the biosphere's living web. The human is an integral species of the biosphere who is born and dies according to the mandate of the biosphere. The mandate of the biosphere supersedes the mandate of any man-made law. All species of the biosphere are obedient to the law of the biosphere except the human. This is because only humans place obedience to man-made law above obedience to biospheric law. By following its own man-made law, the human species is in violation of biospheric law and is now claimed under the jurisdiction of the biosphere for biospheric rehabilitation. This defines the purpose of the First Planetary Congress of Biospheric Rights. The mandate of the biosphere is a spiritual mandate. In order to maintain its own measure and proportion, the biosphere is obedient to divine law. The only spirituality the biosphere can tolerate and condone in humans is the spirituality of the universal religion by which all humans will be bound back into one. Setting humanity on the course of spiritual unity is the sacred duty of the First Planetary Congress of Biospheric Rights. It is an advance in human spiritual and biological evolution to consciously accept and give voice to the mandate of the biosphere. So the mandate of the biosphere still holds and is a key part of our process here in our 7-day Earth Wizards Intensive.
Thank you very much, and good morning, fellow Velotropans. We're back in the classroom, right? And this is the Velotropa 24.3 advanced crash learning session that we're crunching very vast amounts. Everyone has that 28 meditations on the law of time, okay, and so we're crunching that into this intensive, and it's quite intense to be presenting this and to be bringing this to a point of meaning where our consciousness is actually touched, where our hearts are actually touched, where our mind is actually touched, and that we feel the possibility of change within us so that we can affect change in the world around us, because this is the only way really that things change. We are evolution in action. New knowledge, such as the law of time is a manifestation of the evolutionary process. This is the only way that the life on Velotropa 24.3 evolves. And as with the topic for today, time and morality, the test, we've been taking our lens and looking at the galaxy and at the Velotropa sector and coming down into the solar system, and in the cosmology that is manifest in the, for instance, in the telectonon, which we're reviewing yesterday. You have the situation where you have the 5 outer planets and then the 5 inner planets, and of the inner planets, the 5th planet, Maldek, was destroyed, maintaining its orbit as what is called the asteroid belt. Incidentally, in case you didn't know, the largest asteroid, the largest fragment of Maldek in the asteroid belt, the astronomers have curiously enough named Quetzalcoatl. And more recently, some of the smaller fragments bear names such as John, Paul, George, and Ringo. true. Despite the fact that they're enamored of a flat universe, some of them do have poetic sensibility and are coming from the collective unconscious. The reason why John, George, Paul, and Ringo are flying around there is because that's the Maldek was the source of what is referred to as the lost chord, and the lost chord is referred to as the sound Zymox. And so all, as I said, all such sounds and music that we hear from, especially beginning in the Romantic period, the asteroid belt was discovered in 1804, and that the period of Romanticism in music was in full bloom at that time, and then continuing through the 19th century, and then right down into present day, where that's all been transformed into rock and roll and heavy metal. That all of that is reverberations of the lost chord, the search for the lost chord of Zymox, the stairway to heaven, and all of that kind of thing. And so that planet was destroyed. Then we have the Mars, the civilization on Mars, which was also destroyed. Mars originally had a much greater electromagnetic field. Now that electromagnetic field is almost nil. And of course, as we have said, all of our curiosity about going to Mars and so on is really part of that trying to remember. We're all trying to remember, total recall. And so can we have that just to show the board again? I want to get to my point here. And the the main issue then is that for the you have here, this is the Maldek here, and this is the Mars here, and so those two circuits are not functioning. Okay, those two parts of those circuits are no longer functioning, and so what that's caused, it's caused a break in the system. Okay, originally there was a system of what are called flux tubes that ran from the sun through the planetary system, through the poles of all the planets, a series of flux tubes, a positive, negative series of flux tubes that also correspond to the sunspot cycle movements. Well, when these planets were blown out, the flux tube system was broken, and so now we are down where everything has been reposited in the Velatropa 24.3, the third planet, which we refer to as Earth. And the point is that if Earth suffers the same fate as Maldek and Mars, then this solar system will be scratched. That the evolution of the star will not continue, because the orbits maintain the harmony of the solar consciousness, which is actually being evolved by the star. Consciousness is not being evolved by us here on Earth, no matter how many workshops or textbooks on consciousness we may create and write. The consciousness is being evolved by the star, and so the star is dependent on this third planet maintaining its connection with the eighth planet, Uranus. Uranus is the only planet that has its poles pointed toward the sun, which means also pointed at our Earth. And so we are trying to make sure that through the 28-day circuit that we open up again the stairway to heaven, and thereby reestablish the flux tube system that was ruptured when these two planets were blown out. So that's in a scientific nutshell what we're doing. And so we're down to a very, very tiny little window between now and 2013 to see if we can keep the third planet from blowing out, and thereby maintain the harmonic orbital system of Velatropa 24 Kinicha House, so that the solar consciousness can evolve and go to the next stage. Okay, so this is the whole meaning, as I said, of why actually we are here, and the test is right up against our face. We're right at the moment where we have the opportunity to actually do something with our consciousness to interface with this process, so that so that we can begin to stabilize the situation on Earth and in the solar system, so that the chord of the fifth force can be sounded again. The chord of the fifth force is sounded again when the flux tube system is reestablished and what are called the time tunnels are reopened that connect our planet with the planet that holds the 8th orbit, which is Uranus. That's basically the script that we're operating with. And this is also referred to as the test, and it's a function of the relationship of time and morality. As we have said, that morality is a function of living in natural time. That in actuality, as we've said, when you are absolutely living in natural time, there's no need for laws, there's no need for legislature, there's no need for any of that kind of thing. That people, when everything is returned to being in the universal cycle, then there is a natural morality that occurs, and which is also affirmed by the restoration of telepathy. When there's telepathy, it's hard to lie to other people. You know, generally anyway, you know when someone's lying. We have enough intuitive or instinctual sense, to pick up when there's an untruth or dishonesty. But when you're completely in telepathy, well, then you know exactly what's going on, and so you don't need to have this highly elaborate system of laws and punishments and so on. So the deviation from living in the natural cycles of time is what has created the situation of the human deviation. It has created the situation of what we refer to as the Judgment Day trial, okay? And that this has everything to do with our relationship to the biosphere. The cause of the Judgment Day trial is the human deviation from living in natural cycles of time. All of life is one, okay? The great scientist Vladimir Vernadsky, who originally wrote the book on the biosphere and defined all the laws of the biosphere, defined life as the unitary phenomenon on the surface of the earth that maintains itself through a support system which consists of the cycles of water and oxygen and air and atmospheric cycles and all of that, the vegetation, the soil, all of that creates one elaborate support system. It's all one, what Vernadsky refers to as a geochemical process. And it's all one large set of cycles that of geochemical, geo-earth and chemical, the different phases of metabolism and so on, where where you undergo change from one state or condition to another. Okay, so all of that is one unitary organism. Life is a unitary organism. The planet, when you see that, it's one whole thing. Okay, it has its different. It's the one ocean, actually. It's all one ocean. All the oceans are connected, and then the land masses are basically like large islands arising from this one vast ocean. It's all one earth, and so the life is all one unitary organism, from the plankton, the phytoplankton in the ocean, which actually is responsible for a lot of the creation of the oxygen, along with what happens in the rainforests, from the plankton and the microbes and all that, up to complicated evolved species, such as the mammals, the reptiles, and the mammals, and ourselves. We're all functioning with the same overall DNA code. So it's all one unitary organism. So when we talk about the deviation from natural time, we're talking about also the deviation from the rest of life. And in the deviation from the rest of life, at one point, what happens is that we create an imbalance, okay? Because when we deviate and we go into our own timing system, then we lose the instinctive relationship that we have to the rest of life. Okay? As we know, in the indigenous, in the aboriginal, and the prehistoric societies, that the web of life is greatly respected. Everything it's understood as being a great web, a great weaving of life, and the relationship between the different living species and the human species and the rocks and the clouds and everything is seen as one large unitary phenomenon, and the purpose of life is to maintain that cycle, to maintain that balance. But and of course in those types of societies, which are the original societies, which in the Telektonon prophecy, that's referred to as the people of the dawn. Okay, the people of the dawn, the people and the people who enter into the process of history are referred to as the people of the book. Okay. Buddha is referred to as a messenger of the people of the dawn because he left no book. He didn't write a book. He was not in that tradition, though his teachings then are involved in the historical process. So the people of the dawn are the original people. That is the original way. That is how we lived in the cycle of nature, how we lived in time with nature, and fundamentally there was no grave moral problem the way we experience the problem today. But this is the experimental zone, so the process of what we call the process of history began. And the process of history was actually the entrance into the test zone. That here, what we call history was the point at which the karmic residue, the karmic repository of the lost planets was all focused then on the Earth. The Maya created the Baktun, the 13 Baktun count, and that whole cycle. Do I have my Baktun map? You know what it looks like. Think about it. Visualize it. Baktun. No. Forgot. Oh, yeah, there it is. I'm a good guy. I got my Baktun map, okay? I may be slightly absent-minded and I didn't take my ginkgo biloba this morning, but I know it's there. They're not going to fool me, okay? This scheme of the 13 Baktun cycle, the long count, 1,872,000 days from August 13th, 3113 BC to winter solstice 2012. Okay, that whole cycle that was created to show the isolation, okay, of the karma of the lost planets, okay, and how it would be working out through this final cycle of 5,125 or 5,126 years, the last fifth of a whole larger cycle of almost 26,000 years, equivalent of roughly of a Platonic year. And so that's what this schema was created for, was to show that this is precisely the time of the trial in which all of that previous karma is here, and where we have the opportunity to demonstrate our free will. And the test always of the free will is, do we listen to the voice of Iblis, of Satan, which is actually our ego. It says in the prophecy, Telektanon, the many-headed the many heads of Iblis or Satan, which are all the manifestations actually of our ego. Okay, and the ego is what is the playground of Satan, which is all the possibilities that exist for not aligning our will with the divine plan. Just as simple as that. When we say the people of the dawn living the way they do, they are completely in the unconscious and totally attuned with the divine plan. They're living in harmony with the cycles of nature. They work out their different contracts with the different species, with the different life forms. They ritualize all of that. And there's no, as I said, there's no really heavy moral problem that exists with that. But the process of history was to then set up the final test zone to see how we were going to handle this. Were we going to be able to avoid what happened on Mars or Maldek, or would we march blindly right into that trap? And of course, as with all programs, the final trap was set in what is referred to as the 13th Baktun, and that beginning in 1618, when the 1260 frequency had become the dominant unconscious mental frequency of the human species, and the main factor that was motivating it to deviate increasingly from the cycles of and the laws of nature, which promoted the creation of the scientific materialist revolution, which created then the industrial age, which then created the acceleration of the frequency within our own DNA to do everything it could to keep up with the machines, which keep going faster and faster. So the human society goes faster and faster because the machines go faster and faster, and the technology multiplies and proliferates faster and faster until you have precisely the kind of situation that we have today, where unfortunately, for most, the effect of the 1260 frequency is such that for many people, they may feel that there might be a problem, but they don't see it, they don't know it, they can't put their finger on it, and so and of course we go blindly along with the different programs basically that have been developed, especially in the last 260 years, which is called the cycle of transformation. And so, as I said, we finally get down to this point where we are today, where the human being has transgressed the bounds of the cycles of time and nature to such a degree that we know that every day more species are going extinct. We know that the depletion of the ozone, for instance, in the South Pole and now in the North Pole is at such a rate that it's creating a very, very great hazard to the biological cycles of life. We know that what is referred to as global warming is now an established and irreversible trend that it will much sooner than later be wreaking a great amount of havoc. So, and on top of that, then we have continuing debilitating technological factors like Raytheon or HARP or extra low frequency types of tests that continue to destabilize the geomagnetic field and the electromagnetic field. So all of this situation is what actually brings on what we refer to as the Judgment Day situation. The Judgment Day situation is that at one point the karmic effect of proceeding in this way becomes so great that boom, the big pancake falls on everything. and you can't get up out of it. And that's it. So that's what we're looking at right now. A lot of people say, oh, we'll make it, or it's okay, but you have to do something. First of all, you have to raise your consciousness to what this is. And second of all, if you see what the solution is, then you have to begin to work with that solution. As I said, this is very serious business. We're dealing with actually what we could refer to as the fate of the earth, the fate of the planet, the fate of the human species, the fate of all of life, the fate of the future of the earth. We're dealing with the fate of our whole solar system. And so it may be that, as we said, everything is written and recorded and it's already done, and maybe the outcome is good. Maybe the outcome is that in 2013 there will at least be 144,010 people still hanging in there, and it'll work. But right now that doesn't change anything for this minute. That will only work, that outcome will happen properly only if at this moment that in our little slots that we rise to the occasion, that we lift ourselves up and get out of our ego and get to a point of really understanding really what this means, and what we might be able to do. So this is the meaning of the, what we call it, the test and the Judgment Day trial. In 1996, we held the first Planetary Congress of Biospheric Rights, which was basically to this point where we also worked out a number of proposals for how to stop the machine, as it were, how to stop the beast, what were the areas that we had to address, how do we go from a mindset that is always thinking in terms of crime and criminal acts, and how do we go beyond that? Okay, what does biospheric rehabilitation mean? One of the things that biospheric rehabilitation means is that you send all the criminals to art farms instead of sending them to horrible, gruesome courts. and who knows really who the criminals are? The criminals are the ones who are destroying the biosphere. That's what we're talking about here, the first level criminals, okay? The ones who probably are in big corporations, who are heedless of what is going on. Well, that's just some idea there that we have to go beyond thinking, even as if we've been thinking all the time in this penalizing type of way, that we have to go to looking at. No, we have to go farther than that. We have to go to a much higher level than that. We have to figure out ways in which we are really rehabilitating ourselves rather than continuing to punish. We followed the philosophy through history of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, okay, which is instinctual. If someone punches you, you punch them back. That's instinct. That's normal, okay. But the higher morality is saying, no, I'm not going to punch back. The higher morality is, how do we go beyond that level of instinctual behavior, which is normal, and go to a higher level? And that's why it's called evolution. That's why the great teachers through history always said that, right, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But if you're patient, it's a lot better for your soul. And how do we as a species, get to that level? We have to get to that level as a species, so that we are able to actually evolve into a higher level of moral intelligence. So this is the situation that we are in right now. The prophecy Telektonon defines this whole Judgment Day cycle as the 7 years of prophecy, that from 1993 to the middle of this year, 2000, and then beyond that through the next 13 years. But the difference between the first 7 years, the 7 years of prophecy, and the next 13 years is that because of the law of time, over the next 13 years, we are actually, those of us who are awakened as a human community to the law of time, that we are able to actually participate in what is referred to as the second creation. And so the 13 years that follow the 7 years of prophecy are referred to as the 13 years of the second creation, where we do have the tools, where we do have the knowledge, where we do have the instruments to completely reorganize our social forms, to reorganize our intelligence, and to actually begin to restore the biosphere to its natural balance. So this is just giving you a picture of what actually this is. In terms of the even more scientific definition, what we are referring to at this moment in time is called the biosphere-noosphere transition. The biosphere-noosphere transition was first identified by Vladimir Vernadsky, and it refers to the point at which the effect of the deviating species upon the biosphere itself creates a situation where a transformation or a transition to a completely different state is inevitable. And the prophecy of Valum Votan defines, again, this time of the biosphere-noosphere transition as the period between 1993 and 2013, that we're right at this very moment arriving at a peak where what is referred to as a condition of biogeochemical combustion. The planet is in a condition of biogeochemical combustion where the level of transformation of the level of molecular chemical transformation, which is often referred to as industrial pollution, is at such a great incidence that it is actually affecting the entire field. And so when you have the whole system being affected by that internally from within the system, a crisis provokes a profound change. The change that was predicted by Vernadsky and also by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin was the emergence of the noosphere from this crisis of the biosphere, and this is what is referred to as the biosphere-noosphere transition. What you see here at the center, the Earth, is the crystalline octahedral core of the Earth, and then the different lithosphere and so on. And then around here is the biosphere itself, which is the thin film or envelope of life and its support system on the surface of the planet. Here on the inside track you have the entire 26,000 year cycle, so that the last 5,000 years begin about right here, and then the last 260 years are just right in here. And this last 260 year cycle is as we said, is the cycle of the cycle of transformation, which basically corresponds to the period of the Industrial Revolution to the present. From the point of view of the biosphere, all human civilization is a geological phenomenon. We are not separate from the geological evolution of the Earth, and what we do actually affects the geological evolution of the Earth. So this last little period right there is the period in which is referred to as the period of geochemical combustion, in which the operating on the 1260 timing frequency and with purely materialistic ends and motives, that the human species begins to develop and transform the natural, what we call the natural resources of the earth at such a rate that it creates a great amount of what is referred to as free energy. But this free energy is actually, as I said, is the different forms of toxic waste and radioactivity that then go back and in a feedback effect totally affect the biological status, affect the DNA. Okay, so that the DNA accelerates more, especially of the deviant species, but all of the species get affected. The birds are having a hard time in their migratory patterns. Whales, whole groups of whales will go beach and die, commit suicide. Other species will just go absolutely extinct because the rainforests are totally despoiled and destroyed, and the Raytheon and the HARP extra low frequency beams only contribute to that condition. And in addition to that, you have the 24 GPS satellites that are continuously beaming micro-information beams down into the biosphere and so on. So that creates this very, very, actually very frenzied state. If you look at the whole 26,000 year cycle, and then just see that last 260 years, and then just see the last 40 years, okay, in which the population has doubled. When we look at this on the outer cycle here, when we look at this outer cycle here, this is the last 520 years, starting at around 1490 or so, and then coming up here in both directions. This is the point of the beginning of the Industrial Revolution 260 years ago. This is the last 520 years. Then this shows around here. This shows the population explosion. This is the normal curve, and then this is the deviant curve of the population explosion. And then so you get from going, as I said before, from 500 million to a billion, and 90 years later to 2 billion, and then in the final stage here, following the atomic bomb, then you have a tremendous exponential acceleration of the population and of the production and creation of the free energy, which is the toxic waste, the radioactivity, and all of that phenomenon, which then contribute to the process of the global warming and the ozone depletion. So it's an absolutely a whole system problem or whole system situation. And when you finally get this in here, this shows you the time from 1992 up to the time of 2000, and here we are just right here at 2000. This is the last 10 years. Here we have a massive explosion. This is when the transition to the noosphere actually begins, and here we are at 2000. This is where this is the Rainbow Bridge, and then up to here to 2012 and 2013, where we will have the full emergence of the noosphere. The noosphere refers to the mental envelope of the Earth, which is what is that? That's actually the creation of the telepathic field of the human species. That's what's missing. As I was talking yesterday, as I said, we're like a large, highly disconnected galactic microbe colony, and that we're alienated, we're separated, we have artificial boundaries, we believe in all sorts of things that keep us separated. We fight about these artificial things which aren't even real, and all of that kind of thing. So we're not here alone, and we have already transgressed the bounds, and so we are at a point where the karmic boomerang is about to hit. It's quite possible that the karmic boomerang effect will begin in another week. Well, we have the planetary lineup, and that we don't know how much effect will happen after that. At the very least, that we will be anticipating the beginning of the destabilization of the institutional structures that exist, and we are already in a state of profound barbarism, and so we need all the goodwill that is possible, at the very least, to offset the worst effects of the destabilization of the institutional structures of the old order. There may be even worse damage. The astrophysicists on the Russian side, which are very different from the flat universe astrophysicists, the astrophysicists on the Russian side have been looking at this thing for a long time. This is, interestingly enough, this is the mapping of the sunspot cycles, which we'll be talking about more this afternoon. This is done by an astronomer in St. Petersburg, and who was very struck by how the sunspot cycles look like the Hunab Ku. Okay, that the spiraling of the Hunab Ku, the one represents the sunspot cycles go in two phases, and so they switch polarity. So you see the two phases where the polarity has been switched. But they've been looking at the effect of the sunspot cycles and what we might call the cosmic energetics of the electromagnetic shifts that are occurring in the magnetic fields. And they've been very aware of this, and as I said, they've been tracking already. The poles have been shifting, have been moving at a very rapid rate since about 1890, and that they've been moving even more rapidly in the last few years. So that it looks like it is very possible that a pole shift could be very imminent. As I said, if there was some type of strategic interplanetary electromagnetic imbalance that occurs a week from today as a result of the planetary lineup, if it's more than just a psychical consciousness mind event and actually has effects on the actual electromagnetic field of the planet, then the acceleration toward a pole shift might be might be augmented by that event. So we are at that point where we are dealing with the Judgment Day effect. How are we going to handle that? What is the response of the law of time? We have to keep in mind that several things. One, that this is a whole system process, and two, that we have something to do. That we have a role in this. Okay, that we don't necessarily have to just be passive characters, but that we can do something, and that something we can do has much to do with understanding the law of time and how the mind field that we create can have a very positive effect, and we know it has had very negative effect. The mind field that the human species has created has had a very negative effect. You could say that the ozone depletion, the global warming, the extinction of the species, that's all an effect of the negative state of the human mind. We say, oh, a machine did that, or toxic waste did that, or radioactivity did that. Okay, but where'd that come from? Vernadsky said the machine, because the machine is a creation of the human mind, that the machine has biological properties. That's why it multiplies and propagates so fast. All of these things, radioactivity, toxic waste, ozone depletion, those are all effects actually of the human mind. The human mind put those things into motion. The human mind set the torch that burned down that last 1,000 acres of forest. So already we see what are the negative effects of the human mind. It was the human mind that created the atomic bomb. It was the human mind that created the era that created Chernobyl. And Chernobyl's still operating. It was the human mind that did all that. It wasn't, we say, well, that's a systems error or something. No. We have to take much greater responsibility. So the law of time says that you can't take real responsibility and have a positive effect until you are synchronized in time as a mental telepathic field. Then when you are synchronized according to the correct cycles of time and create a mental telepathic field that is in accord with the synchronic order and the correct cycles of time, then you can have a positive effect that's greater than the negative effect. Because positive effect is always greater. Syntropy accomplishes more than entropy. So we haven't been able to test. We've had a lot of individual great guys, Mahatma Gandhi and Jesus Christ and St. Francis, even John Lennon. Individuals, but what if all those people were all together in one telepathic mind field, synchronized in time? That's very different. So that's the opportunity that exists. We saw that possibility on the morning of August 16th on 1987 on Blue Electric Eagle, because there were hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who spontaneously were all around the planet at sunrise meditating for peace. And that had an effect for a while, but we had to learn how to harness that effect. And to harness that effect, we have to understand the law of time, and we have to be synchronized in the right time. That's the only reason that we ask people everywhere around the planet to please, por favor, bitte, s'il vous plaît, let's all get in the same calendar. Synchronize ourselves in time, as time, through time, and keep synchronized. And keep our mind field going. Then we'll begin to create the positive mind field that the planet has absolutely not seen. We're suffering, and we suffer every day from the effects of the collective 1260 mental field, which is a negative mental field. It's anti-natural, anti-cosmic, and it leads you to a flat universe where you'll fall off into the void forever. That's not common sense. So the law of time says, no, you can do it, and if you understand, and you need to understand, this is a whole system situation. This isn't something that an individual can solve. It's only something that a collective field can solve. A collective field that's functioning on behalf of the entire system of life on this earth, not just the humans, but on behalf of all of life, on behalf of the earth. So in the whole system description of this, one point after our early effort at bringing Arcturus and Velatropa into scope with the Art Planet Chronicles, and after we had received our 100th rejection slip from different publishers, we turned our attention to something. The denouement of that book, the Art Planet Chronicles, is when that mysterious future group, the Planet Art Network, defeats the Syndicate for Material Evolution. And it defeats the Syndicate for Material Evolution by understanding the relationship between human biopsychology, the Earth's electromagnetic field, and creates a circumpolar rainbow bridge. So I said no. I said, well, no one wants to publish that. That's too far out. I'm too crazy. But I know one thing, that the science behind that is real. That the human biopsychic field collectively in resonance can actually interface with the Earth's electromagnetic field and create a circumpolar rainbow bridge. We know that you can go, and still in some places, and go to someplace where the indigenous people can do a rain dance and it will rain. We know there's such people. We know there's rainmakers. We know Tibetan lamas can produce rain. Okay, how is that? Change the weather. That's because there is a relationship. We are not disconnected. There is a relationship between our biopsychic field and the electromagnetic field of the Earth that we're on. Otherwise, you know, it would be totally crazy. We are all one phenomenon. We're all one part of one whole system. So rather than be frustrated by the inability to get the Art Planet Chronicles published, I said, no, I'm going to show them the science behind this. It has to do something with the ancient science of geomancy, because that also had to do with aligning human situation in relationship to the energy currents of the Earth and also with the atmospheric currents. And so I thought, well, there's a form of planetary geomancy that we're dealing with. All previous forms of geomancy were localized forms of geomancy, but there's a planetary form of geomancy. So with that thought in mind, I said, okay, it's what we're talking about with the interface of the human biopsychic field and the rainbow bridge and the electromagnetic field to create the rainbow bridge is a form of planetary geomancy, and there's a science to that. And so that finally resulted in the creation of this text here, which some of you may be familiar with, which is called Earth Ascending an Illustrated Treatise on the Law Governing Whole Systems. And I'd looked at this I approached this whole point. I said, well, I'm going to demonstrate that there is a science behind this, that the Art Planet Chronicles wasn't just a piece of imaginative fiction that was so far out of the ordinary that no one would publish it, that there's something real to this. And so this book came into existence. It was a very miraculous process how it came into existence, and it was definitely a process of being able to read synchronistic signs and just follow little clues. I've always operated by the philosophy that what appears in the periphery of your vision is more important than what's staring at you in the face. And so by paying attention to those little things that come up aside from what it is you think you're looking for, that's where things come from. I thought I was writing a book on planetary geomancy, and then I discovered reading about the life of Benjamin Franklin, who incidentally, Benjamin Franklin was the first person who put together that there was a connection between the aurora borealis and the aurora australis, and suggested that there are electromagnetic currents that went around the planet that stopped at the equator to create a pause there, but that actually there was the potential of a whole connection between the two poles that produced the aurora borealis and the aurora australis. So I was reading something about Benjamin Franklin. Then I found out that Benjamin Franklin was quite a mathematician as well, and that he was very gifted at creating what are called magic squares, and that he created one magic square of 8, which I looked at because I'd studied the I Ching for a long time, and I knew that that 8 magic square of 8 is 64, that corresponds to the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, and also the 64 codons of the DNA. And then I went and I looked at that, and I saw, well, that was very interesting, because in the magic square of 8, every row vertically and horizontally adds up to 260. And I said, aha, that's it. The connection I've been looking for between the DNA, the I Ching, and the Mayan calendar. But mathematically, I saw that it was implicit in the magic square of 8, and I saw then that in actuality that there is an actual mathematical harmony between the DNA code and what we refer to as the 1320 frequency of the Mayan calendar, the Tzolk'in, okay, that somehow or other they're connected. And then I also saw, how could that be that the ancient Chinese figured out the 64 hexagrams, and how could it be that Watson and Crick in 1953, 1 year after the tomb of Valum Votan was opened, figured out the DNA code and that there were 64 codons there. There must be something that regulates that information, and so I put forth the hypothesis that there is such a thing as a planetary memory storage and retrieval system, which I refer to as the PSI-bank, PSI PSI-bank, and that the PSI-bank regulates the evolutionary stages and cycles of life on Earth, and that be regulating the stages of evolutionary stages and cycles of life on Earth, that the PSI-bank therefore demonstrates the interface of the coding of the DNA with the 1320 timing frequency as it is manifest in the 1320 matrix of the Tzolk'in. I further put forth the formulation of what's referred to as the holonomic equation. Holonomic, which means according to the law governing whole systems, and that in this formulation there are 5 stages of which are defined. The first stage, nature presents itself. In other words, that there's just the raw data of nature that exist, that actually are mathematically formulable. Because it says in the Holy Quran, many different places, it says, and God created everything in exact and precise measure. Now, that means that everything is mathematically formulable, everything is mathematically knowable. Otherwise, it wouldn't be exact and precise measure. So, all the raw data of nature that are presented are actually mathematically formulable. Everything is mathematically knowable. Once you have the presentation of the data of nature, then you have the process of putting ourselves into the equation. Okay, that we wouldn't know about this if we weren't talking about it. This is for us to figure out. That's why we're here. Duh, what's going on? Okay, so the second aspect of that is that man learns from nature, the human learns from nature, the human deals with the raw data, and then the human learns from nature. And the human learns from nature, and in the aboriginal, what you might call the aboriginal or indigenous phase, it's all very intuitive, right? But it's expressed, through different artistic forms or different ritual forms. But they all occur within cycles or patterns or rhythms, which again are a function of the natural time, of being in sync with the natural time, and also demonstrate what we call an intuitive mathematical sensibility. Okay, that there are different patterns. That, for instance, you look at just think of how someone first created some basket weaving, okay, or weaving itself, tapestry, okay, and you look at that, and that's very intuitive mathematics. That's not a random, haphazard process you're dealing with, but there's the mind is so attuned to a process and understanding a natural process that it can create such things. So that's the process of man learning from nature. Then when at a certain stage, if we just take ourselves for this 26,000 year cycle as it's defined in the dream spell, that there's a certain phase of learning where you get to a point of critical mass. And that's the point of critical mass is when then you hit the historical process. And in the historical phase, there's the third phase. Some people, like the Australian Aborigines and many of the indigenous people in Africa and in the New World, they are able to just maintain in a highly conservative, what we call highly conservative ecological, economic balance with the forces of nature. And it seems like the earth actually need that to be like that. And those people have very high sensitivity to that. That's why they say, hey, if you kill the last one of us, you've killed yourself forever. Because we actually are maintaining the balance, and you're blowing it. That's why the Tupac Amaru in Peru several years ago said, hey, we're so desperate we're going to take over that Japanese embassy because we know that who those people are. They're the G7, they're the globalizers, they're destroying everything we got here. So they know that. That's why I say, you kill the last one of us and you've killed yourselves. Don't do that, because the earth needs us to maintain the balance. So that's the people of the dawn. And the people of the dawn have been all but exterminated. They're on reservations. They're drunk in Vancouver and Sydney, Australia. They're all but gone. Tribes of them commit suicide in Brazil, rather than be cheated out of their land by some corporate contract. So we have the next phase, which is man transforms nature, and this is the inevitable part. This is the trial. This is okay. This is the test. So, and here comes. We're going to drop all the Maldekian Martian karma, all the lost planet Atlantean memories, forgotten Lemurias, every place, everywhere where it was blown, and Alpha Centauri, wherever. Drop it all on this planet here. Okay, this is what's called the test. We're in the quarantine zone. Earth is the quarantine planet. Don't go near there. When you notice that of course what we call the UFO phenomenon, just anthropologically speaking, that phenomenon began in 1947, just after the beginning of the atomic tests, after Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the atomic tests. And the UFO was very often spotted, as we know, with the famous Roswell incident, were in those areas. Because they said, hey, what's going on? They really blew it now. They're really messing with Mother Nature. We don't know because we're so alienated from nature, we don't understand that when we split one atom, that message goes through to the whole atomic structure. All the angels are listening to the atomic structure. They're all there. Their message, information service. Say, wow, did you see what they did? They split the atomic structure. And look what they did. They released all that stuff. They changed everything. The biology and the geology of the earth was changed irrevocably by the atomic bomb. Hiroshima changed everything. Trinity site changed everything before Hiroshima. So that's why the UFO phenomenon came in after that, because they said, wow, what are they doing down there? Big red alert in the quarantine zone. That means they've entered the final phase, what's called red alert. Okay, so they're out there looking, seeing how it's going, saying, well, are they gonna get it? Well, how are we gonna do this? Well, according to the Arcturus probe, different forms of transmission are possible to alter the situation from within. That's why I was invited to a UFO conference in Russia just before we left to go to Germany very recently, and as I had about 20 minutes to say everything. And I did. I'm very long-winded now, it appears, but I had my 20 minutes. But I told them right off the bat, I'm one of them. I've been contacted, and I'm sent here to give you this message right now because I've been contacted to give you this message. I'm one of them inside. Okay, I don't have wings like an angel because that wouldn't work. But I'm just like you, and my DNA is just like yours. But I've been coded to give you this information, to bring it to you like this, because I couldn't land in a UFO, I'd be dead. So that's how this information is coming forth. Man transforms nature, and the final phase of it is this biosphere noosphere transition. It says that that's followed, and that's what's measured by the Mayan Great Cycle, the 13 Baktuns, as the measure of man's transformation of nature. And the 13th Baktun is called the transformation of matter, because that ends up at Trinity Site in Hiroshima and Chernobyl. That's the transformation of matter that we're talking about. And that, so we're now at this final point again on our right there, that last little cartoon. Right there, that last little cartoon, which began in early 1993, and we got 7 years of that gone and 13 years to go, and so that's where it is, and so that's where the test is. And so the fourth phase, after man transforms nature, the fourth phase is nature evaluates man's transformation. That's what we're talking about, the Judgment Day trial, the karmic boomerang that we're now experiencing. It may be that the irreversible effects of the global warming and the ozone depletion over the next 10 or 15 years will wipe out most of us. Who knows? Who knows how all that's going to go, but no one now can stop what's already been set in motion. When we set off and did all the atomic bomb tests, we did something that never happened in the whole 4 billion years of the geology of the Earth, and that was we created what's called steady state background radioactivity in the atmosphere. No matter where you are, for the first time, you could get your Geiger counter and it'll click. And the radioactivity that we introduced, steady state radioactivity, not to mention the fallout from Chernobyl that's been carried around the world, and that burn is still going into the core of the Earth, that steady state background radioactivity has affected completely the DNA of all of life. So, we're all in the process of mutating, and it may be that this is the natural evolutionary process. This is what we're supposed to be. This is how we affect the next evolutionary stage, because we are mutating. We'll never be the same. We're never going to go back anywhere. We'll never be the same biologically. We'll never be the same culturally, in any possible way. So this already, the evaluation of nature is occurring. The positive aspect of the evaluation of nature is the revelation of the law of time. Because the revelation of the law of time gives us the analysis, the whole system analysis of how we got here and exactly what is going on, and how we get to a positive state with what is going on, how we can get to that positive state. And the positive state is brought about because the law of time defines time as the evolution of consciousness. It connects time and consciousness, which were disconnected by the creation of the 1260 timing frequency and of the whole global civilization that has evolved on the basis of that timing frequency. So we now have what we call the positive antidote. The law of time could have only been squeezed out of the human psyche during a crisis as bad as the crisis that the planet is now in. That when you have a fever and the fever breaks, okay, there's a little break in the fever, and then that little break in the fever is the law of time. It says, no, there's an analysis, this is what's going on, we have really deviated this far. As much as the political leaders don't want to think about this, I don't want to hear this analysis, because it really does mean we have to shut down those machines. We really do have to change our way of life. We really do have to stop burning fossil fuels. We really do have to do all those things, which all the big corporations say, no man, that's our money. That's all it's about. And the analysis of the law of time says, yes, we know that that's what it's about, because your 1260 timing frequency has addicted you to the philosophy time is money. And you don't know how to break it. You're a bunch of mad addicts. Money, money, money. I always remember that when I was in an airport in 1986 and I looked at the newsstand and I saw a magazine called Money. And I said, well, hey, I can understand psychology today, popular mechanics, but money? Now I go to airport newsstand and there's at least 6 or 7 or 8 magazines just about money. So that philosophy is ruthless, and it is absolutely destroying your planet. And people say, well, we have to change our way of life. Lester Brown runs the World Watch Institute. And in 1981, he gave his annual State of the World report for the World Watch Institute, and he says, well, we know what all the problems are, except for we don't know how to get a handle on the main underlying problem, and that's materialism. So we wrote to Lester Brown and said, yeah, we know how to get a handle on materialism. It's called the 1260 timing frequency. And that's what's underlying materialism. If you want to change it, change your calendar. Of course, Lester Brown, he's part of the Old Boys Club. He sends us polite letters every so often saying thank you very much, or his secretary does. Mr. Brown is traveling and can't be at your summit. But that's the root of the problem. If that's the problem, if they're saying materialism, of course materialism's the problem. It's a state of mind. It's a state of consciousness. And it's rooted in this flatland philosophy, 1260 timing frequency. And the only way to, and so everyone says, how are we going to change it? Well, you have to, one little change. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with but a single step. S'il vous plaît, por favor. Bitte. Please. That's the single little step that will begin to change. No one wants to believe that, but the people will believe it, and the people will do it, because the evolution operates through people and not through the institutions. The institutions are totally bound in the 1260 form. They don't want to give up their existence. And so the people are the evolutionary process. That's why I say, if you are hearing this message, I said if you are hearing this message, back there, if you are really hearing this message, then you're participating in evolution, because you will know what to do. This is the biosphere-noosphere transition. Nature is evaluating this transformation, and the positive evaluation is the law of time. It says, yes, we can do something about it. We can synchronize. What did she read about the Planet Art Network? The Planet Art Network the activity of pan is an evolutionary probability that increases with the application of the law of time. This is about the law of time. It's the law of time that is going to increase the effectiveness of the human species in this evolutionary crisis. So, because of that, then we can advance to the fifth and final stage. And the fifth and final stage of the holonomic equation is man and nature synthesize. That gets back to the point of our biopsychic field as a species, our mental field being able to interact with the electromagnetic field of the Earth, with the geomagnetic field of the Earth. And from this point of view, this underlies the whole hypothesis of the possibility of the circumpolar rainbow bridge. And from the point of view of Velatropa, that the Earth, we have to get a clear definition of what we're talking about. A planet is considered to be the smallest unit of galactic time. That's what a planet is. It's the smallest unit of galactic time. A planet is a function of a star, of what's called a local star, and then the planet holds an orbit. An orbit is a function of the stars having a field of harmonic resonance. That's how Kepler and the whole idea of the music of the spheres, Copernicus and Kepler, and that's how Bode found the asteroid belt, because that the star has a harmonic resonance, and as it evolves, the planetary system evolves, and it's the orbit that is held by the planet that is critical. That's why when Maldek was destroyed, the remnants of it held the orbit. Okay, so that orbit's still there. Okay, and it defines that whole orbital field. So the planet itself then is like the little gyroscope that holds that orbit. Okay, and so that's a very important point. And so the planet is the smallest unit of galactic time, and then the planet very often will have like a satellite or a system of satellites, which we call the moon, okay, which assist the planet in maintaining its function as a galactic timing device, okay. So that that's why the timing device of the Earth is the moon, okay, and the moon actually goes around the Earth 13 times a year. So not from the synodical point of view of new moon to new moon, it's like there's 12 and 1/3 lunations. From the sidereal point of view, there's over 13. When you're actually out there, that moon is going around the Earth 13 times. Okay, that's the timing system. That's like the sun. One of Velatropa 24, the sun. One of its timing mechanisms or devices. Okay, is seeing that how that goes around, and then all the planets in relationship to each other then create a large harmonic field of resonance. And so we get to a very interesting point then, as I say, a week from today, when we have this planetary lineup and with so many planets in opposition, as it were, to the Earth on the other side of the sun. Okay, so this looks like it's actually a very unique opportunity, which also was in the dynamics of time. Interestingly enough, the one place that the planetary lineup is referred to in the dynamics of time is in section 9, the nature of hyper-organic evolution and the advent of the Psychozoic era. And interestingly enough, it's in section 911. 9.11, planetary emergency. Okay? The lineup of all the planets except Earth on the other side of the Sun, spectral moon 4, red self-existing Earth, May 5th, 2000, provides a collective telepathic test for the activation of the electromagnetic polar flux tube regulators. The object is the creation of a telepathic field of magnetic resistance to stabilize the planetary poles. It's very simple. Okay, we'll be going into this field more and more as we get to the conclusion of this 7-day seminary. So we have to understand that the planet, as the smallest unit of galactic time, a planet represents the microcosm of what is referred to as a resonant field model. That the planet is in orbit. It has we got our little moon going around here 13 times a year. The planet's going, and that which keeps the time as the Earth goes around the sun. And then the planet itself is a microcosm of a resonant field model. It consists of 3 resonant fields: the gravitational field, which is experienced as the laterally at the equator, and then going north and south from that. That's what's holding the form there. The electromagnetic field, which goes around the Earth, okay, and then also then what's referred to as the biopsychic field, the field of intelligent life, which has attained the capacity of self-reflection. Okay? So those are the 3 fields that in the planet Holon that we looked at in the dream spell, that you can identify those fields as the gravitational field is the horizontal field, which defines the 5 Earth families: the polar, the cardinal, the core, the signal, and the gateway. The electromagnetic field is goes in the diagonal that creates the different color families. There's the 4 color families. It's in there in your text. All of this is. We got the planet. Oh, yeah, there we go. The color families, when you look at, go in this diagonal form in this way. Okay, that corresponds to the electromagnetic field, and then the biopsychic field is what's held together by what are referred to as the chromatics that are going in this direction. So there's a horizontal direction, which is the gravitational field. Yeah, there, the upside down. The gravitational field is held together by the 5 Earth families going this way, in this form. The electromagnetic field is represented by the color families moving in this diagonal way. Okay, the 4, each one of those is a yellow band, a red band, a white band, and a blue band, which is like the rainbow. And then the biopsychic field is represented by the chromatics that are moving in this direction from the North Pole to the South Pole. Today we are in the dog position in the North Pole. And there's 2 types of chromatics, as we'll explain this afternoon. There's the clan chromatics that connect the North Pole to the South Pole, and then the overtone chromatics that start at the South Pole, jump to the North Pole, and then end up in the signal family. We'll explain that this afternoon. So the whole of these 3 resonant fields is held together by what's referred to as the chronosphere. If you really want to study a lot of that stuff more, you should read this little book here, Pakal Votan. The Call of Pakal Votan, Time is the 4th Dimension, which explains much of this, especially about the chronosphere and the psi bank. The chronosphere is actually includes the psi bank. The chronosphere is the sphere of time. Okay, that every day that a pulsation, a temporal or pulsation of time occurs within this field, and that's registered as the chronosphere. The chronosphere operates obviously on a 1320 frequency, and it's supposed to, through the psi bank, is supposed to regulate the timing of the DNA. But particularly in the last Baktun cycle, the 13th Baktun cycle, the human DNA has captured the planetary mental field at the 1260 frequency, so the chronosphere is, as it were, as far as we're concerned, is inoperative. So part of the experiment of the law of time, which we will be describing this afternoon as the RINRI project, is activating the chronosphere, activating the psi bank, activating the chronosphere, opening the psi bank, which is the planetary memory field, for the purpose of creating the circumpolar rainbow bridge. So this represents that's again the whole system of the planet. You can see the planet again from the core, the crystal octahedral core at the center, the different mantles, the lithosphere, etc. And then at the surface you have the biosphere, and then the whole of that is a function of the three resonant fields: the electromagnetic field, the gravitational field, and the biopsychic field. And all of those then are, as the Earth turns every day, is regulated by a fourth dimensional field, which is referred to as the chronosphere, the sphere of time, okay? And that the chronosphere is what regulates the psi bank to coordinate the timing cycles of the DNA. Okay, so that's roughly the program. You can read about it. I won't repeat it right now. It's very simple: electromagnetic, gravitational, biopsychic, okay, and then the chronosphere, which coordinates the planetary memory field, the psi bank. Okay, so that's supposed to be operating a 1320 frequency. And so, as we said, when the human species became unified as a global species, it was very unfortunate that it was unified under a pseudo-solar calendar, the Gregorian calendar, that was locked into the mechanical clock, which created the 1260 mental frequency. So therefore, the action of the chronosphere could not be experienced. Okay, but this all goes back to the fact that we are in this free will experiment, which has been intensified during the 13 Baktun cycle of history, and in that sense, it was all inevitable to be like this. So the final phase is the man in nature synthesizes what we are beginning the experiment now. That's why the 13 Moon Calendar Change Peace movement was begun in 1993 and 94 to begin the process of seeing if we could get sufficient critical mass of human beings synchronized in the correct timing frequency following this one simple little instrument. Everything is based on that. If we're not following that, none of this is going to mean anything. So this is the bottom line program. This is the foundation. This is what makes the law of time practical and pragmatic for any human being. This isn't an abstract theory that's being kept by a bunch of white-coated, laboratory scientists someplace. Okay, no, this is science for the people. This is putting science in the people's hands, that you start with this. This is practical, pragmatic. You can actually begin to do this, and when you know that you're participating in an evolutionary experiment, when you know that it's not just those of us here, but there's also in Japan and everywhere else in the world, okay, that there are groups of people who are doing this, who are coordinating their lives according to this timing frequency, and who are using the different tools that the law of time has produced, then the collective mental field increases. That's the whole point of doing any of this, of following the calendar, of doing the dream spell, of following the telectonon, is to participate in a common mental field that is returning from the deviation that created the great moral problem, the great moral disaster of the biosphere as it is today, that we are beginning what's called the return journey. That the return journey, to really make it real, actually means you have to actually change your frequency and actually consciously do that. And the only way you can consciously begin to change your whole frequency, your timing frequency, your mental frequency, your biological frequency, is by beginning to participate in following this particular calendar, the 13 moon calendar. That's what this is about. It's not about becoming neo-Mayans. I would like to say that we, in our 7 years, we have never said that this was the Mayan calendar. Well, I said it was the 13 moon calendar. In fact, we said it's the 13 moon calendar of peace, because if we follow this properly, it will bring peace to our planet. So it's based on the knowledge that was known by the Maya, but which has now been understood and brought into conscious formulation as the law of time. So it's for the two chief functions of returning to the correct time are to restore balance to the biomass constant. The biomass constant is regulated by the chronosphere in 5-day cycles, 73 5-day cycles every year. So that's the number of the biomass constant is 73. To regulate and normalize that, which has been totally put off balance by the human transgression of the laws of nature and the following of artificial time. So the one function of the correct calendar is to, from a whole system point of view, is to regulate and normalize the biomass constant, and second of all, to regulate the telepathic unification of the human species, which actually, when that is accomplished, that then is the noosphere. The noosphere is the telepathic unification of the human species. The human species finally at last making it to galactic microbe status. Instead of being all split apart and shooting each other. So finally getting to that point. That's the opportunity that exists. That's why in 1969, when the first shots of the whole Earth were sent back from outer space, that was, the space program really should have ended right there. That's all we needed. We say, oh, there we are. I remember sitting there. My son had just been born, and we're sitting at home and holding him in my hands and looking at that. That's all the feedback we need. This is what we are. It is one whole system, one whole planet, one whole Earth. So that, turning Earth, seeing that, that's all we needed to see. That was all we needed. That was so inspiring at that moment. I felt very fortunate that I was able to experience that. And of course at that time it was perfect, because within a month or so then was Woodstock, and it seemed for a moment, that all that held the promise of a dream of a different kind of future. So it's really important that if you hear this message, that you commit wholeheartedly to it. Yeah, I was from that generation, hippies. And I was really happy that I was a hippie. I was a university professor, but I was also a hippie university professor, and somewhere I took pride in the fact that I was fired for being a hippie university professor. Because that was that was a real dream, and it still is. A very, very real dream. I'm lucky that I'm still alive. And I'm lucky that I didn't lose sight of that dream. So, hold the light high. That's what the dream says. So we'll have some more this afternoon. Thanks for letting me get emotional with you again.
And thank you all for being so attentive. And in your Earth Family groups today is the time for you to really share with each other and express yourselves. And so